asks, what is your biggest threat when it comes to scalability? What can be done to avoid the ETH news all over again? So what is your take on that, Joe?
Sure. Well, we have an advantage that Ethereum didn't have, right? The first is we have the insight, knowledge, wisdom that is gained from watching Ethereum, right? Ethereum did have growing pains, no other way to put it. Now, on the fee side, they kind of do have that gas model, which every once in a while would get way out of control, in my opinion. And depending on their load, that would create issues. Now, what is the purpose of that? Essentially, you have a limited resource called block space, and you have limited computational power. And when that gets competitive, it's designed that a free market adapts, and essentially you pay for priority. Okay. Now, Ergo does have a similar mechanism in terms of paying for priority. We do not have the same gas fees, and we also have a ton of research and development that came from Ethereum that they essentially had to, discover as needed, right? Like they had the problem they had to fix, they had to go out and find solutions. And ultimately, the broader consensus was what you need to do is you need to put computational power into a second layer and have a small footprint on the base chain. And that's ultimately going to be how you scale. It's a good path. There's a lot of research development frameworks that Ergo can already leverage because, that research and development knowledge came about before we have the same problem that Ethereum had versus, they had to deal with it on the fly, right? When you're talking about front running, you're talking about MEV. That was a pretty popular mechanism in Ethereum. And the reality is it does kind of exist in every market, right? MEV is an interesting concept where, you could look at it in almost like real estate. If you're closer to the market, you have the ability to get in and out before people. You see that all the time. Like banks will buy distressed real estate and then sell it to retail before it even comes to market because they have, basically faster knowledge, liquidity that's closer, easier to move. And Ergo, is it theoretically possible? Yeah, you would have to do chained transactions. You'd have to pay a lot for it. But, I tend to believe that that's something that is incredibly hard to eliminate. Now, I guess in theory, you can do it on an application level, right? Most likely, but then every application has to build for that. And personally, my general thinking is that when you have that type of potential advantage, the best thing you can do is distribute it so that, everyone can potentially take advantage of it instead of a small group of actors. That's not something that we've seen too much of. We have seen arbitrage bots that people are running in the ecosystem when there's a price differential between different assets. Bots can scan the blockchain and, essentially trade. We've even seen, a couple of times where we had bot fights, right, where they were bidding against each other for block space. I remember one scenario where I think two bots got into like a bot war and ended up paying something like 300 ERG for the priority fee and made 10 ERG profit, which, miners love. People that are trying to use these systems tend to get frustrated with that. But I think the fee market in proof of work eliminates a lot of potential censorship, right? And, ultimately, if you're going to censor things at an economic disadvantage, that's not in your favor. But it is harder to do that type of activity. Then you get into flash loans. That's not something we've seen yet. I'm not going to be this type to say, no, it's impossible, but it's difficult, right? It would be difficult to achieve. You'd have to do a lot of chain transactions, put them in the same block. We'll see as that develops. I tend to think if something is theoretically possible, then, if there's an incentive, might happen. But it's definitely harder and not something we've encountered yet.